In this video, we complete step 37, Pivot Tables Part 5. So this is going to be the last step for the pivot tables section. And in this step, we're going to pivot the results of when our user gives us both rows and columns. So when the pivot type is all, we're going to return a data frame. So in the prior two steps, or the previous step, we returned a data frame, a simple data frame, whenever the pivot type was rows or whenever it was columns. In this case, I've added actually all the code that will complete this step. So this is already complete. I'm simply going to talk about every line in here instead of live coding it. So before we get there, I want to show what the end or what the result is right before we get into this branch of the program. So after we've aggregated our results, I want to go ahead and output that result once again. So I'm going to just do a little return statement here, return dict, agdict. So this is the aggregated dictionary of the keys mapped to the single aggregated value. So we'll never actually reach this part of the program for temporarily. Let's go ahead in the Jupyter Notebook, and what I want to do here is let's go ahead and do a pivot table that has both rows and columns. Here we're just going to sum up the values for every combination of fruit and state. So we have 4 unique combinations of fruit and state. So what we're going to do here is we want to turn this into a pivot table. So we don't have our we don't yet have a data frame here. We need to convert this into a data frame. Just so you can see the final result, it needs to look like this. So we need to transform this dictionary into this pivot table. So the way we're going to do this is the strategy that we're going to employ is we're going to find all the unique values for the first entry in our pivot table, and all the unique values for the second entry of the key portion of this dictionary, and then we're going to iterate over both of those lists, and then fill in the blanks accordingly with the actual value. So that's what we're going to do here. Let's go back to the code, and we'll remove this return statement. So let's go down here. These are the 2 branches that we completed in the previous step. So now we're here, else. So we've checked whether pivot type is columns or rows, and now we're here in this branch. So the only other option is when the pivot type is all. So this is when the user has given us both rows and columns. So what we're going to do here to get the unique values of all the all the rows or all the columns is with a set. Okay, so we're gonna iterate through this agdict. So this is it's gonna go through the it's gonna iterate through the keys of the agdict. So this is what this does, and we're simply going to add every first key to the row set and every second second element of the tuple to the call set. So remember, the groups in here are 2-item tuples. So this gets the very first item, and this gets the very second item, and we just add it to each set respectively. So sets cannot have duplicates. So row set and call set will contain all the unique combinations for the rows and for the columns. Okay, so we will convert this row set to a list, a sorted list. So sorted returns a list. So it's going to go through and sort that set and actually return a list. And so I have new data here, so I can actually go ahead and erase that. I must have implemented it slightly differently elsewhere. So there's new data up there. We don't need to redefine it. So the rows are going to make up, or the values in the row list will make up 1 column. So in our new data dictionary, we're going to go ahead and go ahead and make that one column. So that will be complete. Then we're going to iterate through every single column, every single unique value of the columns. So we're going to iterate through there. We're going to go one by one over the columns. So maybe it helps to look back over here. So in this instance, our columns were states. So it's going to go by one over the unique values, which are here are just Texas and Florida. So we're just going to iterate over Texas and Florida. And then for every unique value of this, we're going to iterate through every every unique value of the row list. And then we're going to look up that value. We're going to look up what was the actual aggregated value here. So we're going to pass in the tuple to our agdict. So we're going to create an agdict. So we have call here and row here. So we're just going to try to get that value. And if it doesn't exist, we're going to say it is missing. We're going to say we're going to return a nan, numpy, a missing value. So yes, so we'll just keep appending our appending the looked up values in the aggregated dictionary to this new vowels list, and then that will form each new column. So within here, I'm just simply I'm iterating over each column and then iterating through each unique row and creating a new list, and then finally converting that list into an array, and then finally that should create those all the columns that we need to make the to make the data frame. Okay, so let's go ahead and see if this works now. So we do this, it looks like everything is good. So and the last thing we'll need to do here is to run these tests. So let's go ahead and run PyTest, and this is in the test grouping class, so I need to update this. So test grouping, then we're going to test the pivot table rows or calls test, and that passes, good. And then we have one more test, the pivot table both. Okay, and let's go ahead and run that one, and that one also passes. Okay, great. So this was a very complex method. You can either do it by just rows, by just columns, or by rows and columns. And you know, the bulk of the work is sort of, you could sort of separate it into two distinct areas. One is to gather the data into groups, and that's with a dictionary. The second one was to actually then convert that gathered and aggregated data into a data frame. So this is sort of the second portion of it, and the first portion was to gather the data into a dictionary, which was this highlighted portion. So that completes step 37, all 5 parts, creating pivot tables.